Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
We are so looking forward to this conversation today with a fellow, what shall we call it? A kindred spirit, someone who knows what it's like to live and work together, running businesses together as entrepreneurs. So we're looking forward to this conversation with Lillian Brummet. Welcome, Lillian.
Hi, everyone, and hi, you guys. Thanks for having me on your show today. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time. And as our audience knows, before we jump into all the things we want to talk about, we need to give you your proper introduction. So, Jon, can you share the
Absolutely
bio
love doing
with
this.
us?
And from the conversation we were having with Lillian just before we started recording, we just love the idea of having a real example to be able to share. A lot of the time we talk about theory and people are sharing from their experiences there, but this is working together, having done it for a number of years. We're going to talk about that in a moment.
Yes, let's not reveal it. Get into the conversation.
So real practical tips is what we're looking for here. But let me do the bio and then let's jump into it. So Lillian Brummet is an award-winning poet, author, blogger, and the powerhouse behind numerous creative ventures alongside her husband Dave. With a heart for service and a brain for business, Lillian has been dubbed a marketing and networking guru by those in the writing and entrepreneur communities. For over 2 decades, Lillian and Dave have sustained not just a marriage, but a thriving creative partnership, proving that business and love don't have to be at odds. Through their blog, their books, their YouTube channel, and podcast appearances, they offer practical support and encouragement for writers, reviewers, entrepreneurs, and creatives navigating the ups and the downs of meaningful work. Her story is one of resilience, collaboration, and the quiet strength of showing up daily with purpose and intention. From grief to reinvention, Lillian's insights into working with a spouse, building networks, and leading with heart are both refreshing and deeply grounding. So we are looking forward to getting you to share some of those insights, sharing in them with you, Lillian. Working together.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit more about that. Tell us how long you've been working together and
what got you started.
Why do you do this madness? Some people say to us when we say we work together. Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, first, oh my gosh, you kind of stunned me with that introduction. I feel honored by the words that you compiled, and thank you very much for that. That was very touching, and I'll have to listen to that again. That kind of stunned me for a second there. Thank you. So what caused us to move into the world of entrepreneurship? So back when Dave and I were first dating some 37 years ago or so, I had started my own business. I think I was maybe 23 or 24 at the time. And I was servicing families that lived along the lakeside. So I would call them upper middle class, not, astoundingly wealthy, but definitely upper middle class, and providing services for them. And I did that for about 6 years or so. And then I got involved in this 3-car pileup. Now, to give some background, like I come from a broken home. I was on my own when I was 14, just before I was 14. I put myself through school. I paid my own rent.
Oh my
I
word.
worked. I supported other runaways around me. And I put myself into a position where I could run a business. And so I had built all that up. So when the accident hit me, it hit me really hard. I felt like the universe was just slapping me down and saying, you're just not worthy. How dare you try to crawl out of, hell. And so I was very, very I had fallen into deep depression at that point. And I felt like, why go on? I
Mm,
need a reason to go on and move
mm,
forward in life, or to even try. Like, why try? If I'm
Mhm.
just going to get beaten down like that and lose my business because of the car accident. And it was pretty brutal. I mean, I was in physiotherapy for 3 to 4 hours a day for 5 days a week for
wow.
over a year. Like, it was
Oh, wow.
it was brutal, and I still
Mm,
live with it. And so I realized I wasn't going to be able to do the physical work that I used to be able to do, to enjoy the physical activities I used to like to do, like hiking and what have you.
Mhm.
And so I was going to have to adjust my life entirely. In fact, they were telling me at the time that I may not walk without a brace and things like that. So it was a really dark time for me. Um, but I recovered, and I started to look for what can I do now? And so I started taking these courses at the college where they like test your aptitude and figure out like what kind of person are you. And
Mhm.
that was a really interesting emotional journey for me personally, because I had to look at, well, who am I?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I never really took the time because I was just in survival mode and
Mhm.
achieve mode and try to prove I was worthy to the world, kind of thing, that I had
Mhm.
value. To be like those people with the white picket fence, that was kind of where I was
mm,
at. And
mm,
then when I had to step back and go like, well, what colors do I like? Do I like to work outside? Do I enjoy these types of things? Never crossed my mind before. So I had to do these deep dives into this, and that took me on this whole personal journey. But writing kept on coming up, and I thought, I can't be. I struggle a little bit with dyslexia. I'm not, terribly educated. I don't have like big degrees and stuff. Who's going to listen to me, little me, writing? And so writing just kept on going on to the back burner. I kept thinking, yeah, no. I mean, it was a hobby. I
mm,
loved to do it. I was doing it because the pen and I were mates from the
We're good
beginning.
friends. Yes.
It was my therapy. It was my, I always could turn to the pen. But I never looked at it as a career, as something I could do for a living. But later on, Dave got involved in this course called uh, Quality of Writing or something like that. It's no longer, the college is no longer around, but we took this course together, and it was about the business of writing. Having run a business before, that's what I was most interested in. I was like,
mhm,
okay, well, if I'm
mhm,
going to go into this, and Dave was interested in it too, from a like fictional writing side. How do I do that? How do I
Mhm.
query? How do I manage my books? What kind of taxes am I going to be looking at here? All of these kinds of things I wanted to know. And so the course taught me that, how to manage my queries and
okay,
how to do all this stuff. And then from there, the very first assignment was write an article that you think could be picked up and maybe even turned into a series. And that was a trash talk article. And
Ah.
then it got picked up right away. And within weeks, it was getting published in multiple different publications. And then it got published, in Africa and France and England and all
Amazing.
these places, and it picked up, from there. Um, I started doing assignment writing, staff writing jobs. I took on like book review, professional
Mhm.
jobs, product review jobs. I did quite a few different things, dipping my toes in. What do I like? What
mm,
do I want to work for a magazine? Do I want to be a freelancer? And then in the meantime, running this column. And then the opportunity came to produce that column into a book. And
mm,
boy, that changed everything. Then, everything focused on the books.
Yeah, amazing. And now you have 8 books already out there with
Yeah,
a ninth and a 10th coming right behind it.
that's
But
right.
tell us, your story is so inspiring already. Tell
Thank you.
us what it was like getting started in business together, and maybe some of the challenges that you had and some of the insights that you learned to be doing it so well now for 27
yeah,
years.
you made it sound very easy. Yeah, we just started writing, and all of a sudden we started producing books. It was so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Well, working together. So that was a slow evolution. Dave was already playing with the idea of becoming a drum teacher. He had been doing his own repairs for his friends and himself. He had been manufacturing some instruments and percussion accessories for himself. And he was playing with the idea of doing some entrepreneurship with that. And so I was like behind the scenes ready to support him with that. Having run my own business, I was able to provide the business aspect of his art. And so we started collaborating on that. But then when the writing came in, we thought, well, how can we tie all this together without having to have all these different separate business names and, oh, we run 6 different businesses. So we decided to put it all under one roof. And then that way that, and by choosing a fairly generic name, Brummet Media Group, it encompasses everything that we do. So if we tend to go this way a little bit this year or that way a little bit that year, it gives us that flexibility without forcing ourselves into a box with too defined of a title. So that allowed us to evolve and grow as people too in the direction that we currently are. So I'm really grateful that we started out on the right foot in that regard.
And what kind of challenges did you experience living and working together, or do you experience living and working together?
Initially, tons. There were tons and tons. So one of the things that we have learned is to come at things with a solution mindset when you're working with anyone. So once emotions get involved, or someone's starting to feel frustrated, or they're feeling like, oh, maybe this person's doing things a little slower than I like, or this person didn't complete the project when they said they were going to, whoever you're dealing with, whether it's outsourcing or in-house, we have to come at it from a solution mindset, So, what is it that was causing them to slow down? Did they have issues in their life? Were they struggling with certain challenges that we weren't aware of? Is there something that we can do that can ease their journey in regards to completing that project? And by giving that person a safe place to fall, rather than coming at them and saying, darn you, and pointing the finger and being upset and coming at it from like a challenging or a forced cheerleading, rah, 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 can be very, very irritating. But if we come at it from a solution-based mindset, now they feel like they have a soft place to fall. They're not only encouraged to move forward because there's this person behind them who is gently pushing them forward, but they have a partner. They know that they have this partner behind them. By having weekly meetings or monthly meetings, if you can't do weekly ones, it's so important to just sit there with a cup of coffee or a beer, whatever it is, and just sit there and have a chat and just, what are you doing this week? What are your appointments this week? What are your goals this week? How can I help you? If he's going to be very busy this week, maybe I'll take on doing some more of the household chores so that he can move forward with other things, because I'm supporting him behind the scenes. So we're always trying to think of the other person. And that self-sacrificing sort of soft place to fall works both ways. It only works if the other person is doing it as well. And it measuring each other as well. So he really enjoys these things. He really excels at things. Even if he doesn't like this particular task, he's very good at it. So these type of tasks are going to be put on his table, whereas these are the things that I'm going to do. Splitting that up is really important, always collaborating on everything, but saying, here's your things, here's my things is very, very helpful, to be able to hand something off and say, okay, it's time for formatting, Dave, and he'll take it and do that, So
there's so
that
many
kind of
there's so many nuggets that you've hit on already, and I love that phrase, offering a safe place to fall and trying to figure out what it is that they were dealing with or might need support with to help achieve whatever the goal was and deliver. This idea of splitting roles based on strengths is something that we struggled with in the beginning and finally got right in the end. and also just recognizing the different personality types. You haven't mentioned that one yet. I'm curious to know how
Yes.
how that landed for you, but just wanted to pull out some of those great nuggets straight away. Anyway,
Well,
continue with the
I
learnings.
know it seems ironic because I'm usually the one that's in the media, but I'm actually super shy. I have anxiety issues, and I don't like to be around groups of people doing events, things like that. My husband is used to it. As a musician, he's used to being on
Mm.
stage and
Mhm.
talking with people and, smoozing when he gets off stage and all that stuff. So he's used to that. And so for him, he comes across as Mr. Charming and he has all the right words to say. I stumble over them, so things like that. So that part was quite easy to split up. He's good
Mhm.
with the face to face activities, and I'm better in the office. He feels, ironically, very uncomfortable with doing interviews and being on camera and things like
Oh,
that.
really?
Mm.
I don't mind that. So it's kind of interesting that we have these different comfort zones. And so
Yeah.
we're able to split off with that. Dave is much more patient with technology, and he doesn't mind, like, he's that kind of person that, like, he likes looking at maps.
Oh, really?
He enjoys delving into things like, figuring out the nitty gritties. And so that's perfect for him. He can do all the, heavy duty technical stuff, and I'll take on what I am able and willing to learn. I can take that on.
Mhm.
So there's always something that has to be learned because it's constantly evolving, right? And so we're always, are you willing to take this on? Are you willing to learn this? Or sharing what we've learned so
Yeah.
that we both can do a certain task. So it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of different activities are happening every single day. So it's a bit of a balance
Yeah.
there.
You sound like you have very different approaches, things that interest you, things that you're good at. Um, that can be great, but I guess it can also have challenges because now everybody just does what they're good at and leaves the rest. How do you manage that between you to make sure that everything gets done, and even when you don't particularly want to do something, perhaps it still needs to get done. How do you manage that
Mhm.
between you?
Well, I think to be an entrepreneur, you develop skills over time, and those skills are you learn to be self-disciplined.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You learn to be tenacious. You stick to it. You pursue it. If there's a challenge, you figure out a way to get around that challenge, and or pivot if you have to pivot. You know, even temporarily, and then pivot back again. These are things that an entrepreneur has to be okay with, like a tree in the wind. You're sort of, or a water in a river. You're constantly coming across things that you're trying to navigate through. And so for me personally, I really benefit from having like a weekly meeting with Dave. It doesn't take much. It might even be a 5 or 10 minute meeting where
Mm.
we just talk about, like I say, what appointments he has, what appointments I have, what challenges, what are my goals, what are we facing. We also have to schedule time off. So there's times of the day and times where we just say, this particular day, we're just not going to talk about the business. We're going to try to train our minds to shut off the business. So if we have an idea, write it down. And we can
Mhm.
say to ourselves, I wrote that down. I don't have to think about that now. It's written down for tomorrow or another day when we're back
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
business mode. And that sort of refreshes us and keeps us fresh. It can be challenging in that, when it comes to, like, say, I'm in the middle of writing this part of the manuscript where I'm talking about viral catalysts, and so we have a moment where I'm talking about my project, and maybe I get a little too excited about my project, and I'm talking and talking about viral catalysts, and I can see him, his face is getting a little tighter and he's getting a little quieter and he's making less eye contact. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to stop now because, this isn't his joy to
Hmm.
know and learn about this. And so and same with him, like when he's telling me about how he's creating a video and how he had to use this program, my eyes are already rolling in the back of my head. And so there's a point of sharing where there's oversharing.
Yeah.
So we've tried to find these balances. It's definitely not easy. Communication is the key. Just be super understanding of each other. Really, just be on the watch. Just be very understanding of each other.
Hmm.
That's a beautiful summary. And I love the idea of the discipline, rather, of having that weekly meeting to check in. What's your goals and how can I support you? And, I guess the monthly meeting's a bigger version of
Yeah.
that. And there's something else that you just said as entrepreneurs, learning, just being super understanding of each other and there for
Right.
each other. I can see.
Well, the thing is no one is going to be at 100% all of the time, right? None of
Mhm.
us is going to be at
Yeah.
their best every moment of every day.
Yeah.
So we have to be lenient with that, and be able to step up and support maybe a little more this time, and next time
Mhm.
when we're feeling weaker they're going to do the same. So it's really nice to have that support. It's much harder when you're a solo entrepreneur because
Yeah.
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 everything is on your back, and
Indeed.
when you're down the business is down, so
Yeah.
that's much harder. I feel privileged to have a partnership in that regard.
Yeah.
But
Beautifully said.
question? What has it done for your relationship, though? This whole idea of working together and living together. Do you
Mm.
think your relationship? Of course, we don't have the benefit of going back and living life, a parallel
Differently. Yeah.
life without the working together, and then you can compare the two. But if you were to look at it now, do you think your relationship has benefited from working together, or do you think actually this has been tough? It could have been easier if we had just done separate things and not had that working together.
No, I think it bonded us in ways that I couldn't imagine.
Mm.
I've learned my husband on levels that I couldn't imagine as well by also collaborating on these things. As his spouse, it's an honor to support his dreams and his goals
Mm.
and to see them come to fruition. So, like, that is just a joy for me. And um, so I couldn't imagine not having that as part of us. You
Yeah.
know, we have this current goal of creating some more evergreen things going on, like, working on e-courses and further developing the products that we have that we'll be launching on our e-store and things like that, which, takes a lot of behind the scenes activities before it gets launched. But, that gives us a goal where we're looking at, well, this is going to help us in our future where we can maybe slow down on certain,
Hmm.
more physical activities, and we can focus on these other ones. So for us, it's just these life goals. I think when we started the business, our main goal was uh, uh, rather than working for others, and working for the almighty dollar and meeting all those shoulds in life.
Yeah.
Um, Rather than pursuing that, we felt like we wanted to feel like at the end of the day, our life had value, that there was a reason why we existed, that there was, that we had purpose, that we had a positive impact. That was a priority to us. And so we sat down and we talked amongst ourselves, what in Dave's mind, what did that look like for him? And in my
Mhm.
mind, what did that look like for me? And so I think we started out our business with that in mind.
And that's really powerful, because we were having a conversation earlier that so many couples end up
Mm.
in trouble later on in life because they've never stopped to have that conversation. What's the life that you're wanting to design individually and together? what does good look like,
Mm.
and how can we be intentional about creating that? So it's no
Mhm.
surprise that you've been successful in living and working together. You started talking earlier about some of the boundaries that you set, like days when you're not going to talk about business. How do you switch off? How do you, what is there a time in the day that you decide to end and stop being business partners and start being couples again? How do you create the boundaries that keep your relationship alive?
Yes. Okay, those are really good questions because of the types of business and services that we have.
Mm.
I might be doing an interview at 5 o'clock in the morning. He might be doing a workshop at 7 o'clock at night. He might be doing a gig the next day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're all over the place schedule wise. So we don't like sit down and say, from 5 o'clock to this time, we kind of go with a moment. We say,
Mm.
okay, we're going to take the afternoon off. We happen to have time off this afternoon. We're going to take the afternoon off and we're just going to shut down and take a mental break, go for a stroll with the dogs. When we go for a stroll with the dogs, that's definitely not the time to talk about business or finances. Same thing when we're having a moment on the patio or something like that. Just off, turn it off.
Mm.
Um, for me, that's really hard. I'm not sure what goes on in Dave's mind. I don't live in his mind, but for me, my mind's still going. It's going, it's going, it's going. I lay down at night, it's going, it's going, it's going. So I
Mhm,
have,
mhm,
and I have developed a habit of writing things down, making note of something somehow, so that I can, when the thought comes up again, I can tell myself, sort of train my mind. Okay, I wrote that down. Now is not the time to think about
mhm,
that. When
mhm,
I'm back in office mode, I can concentrate on that. I don't have to keep reminding myself about this thought. And so it's sort of like a self-talk for
Yeah.
me personally to shut down that head and say, okay, we're just going to, listen to the birds and to hear
Yeah.
some music and maybe, talk about something else, other like talk about the dogs, anything. Don't talk about the business and shut down those things. Business and finances go hand in hand. And so
Mhm.
sometimes when we're not thinking about business, we're thinking about our finances now. So you kind of have to turn off that whole section of your life and let yourself recharge and refresh. If we
mhm,
don't, we become run down and we start carrying around this garbage truck load of all of these pressures and stresses and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And eventually we're going to dump that truck and it's going to spill over onto other people and eventually it's going to dump onto someone, and we don't want to be that way. We don't want to hurt someone or dump on them, but it's going to happen if we don't stop and refresh ourselves. So that's
Indeed.
absolutely vital to do that and allow the other people to do that too. I think when we get tired, when we get so upset about something that really needs to be done and it's not getting done, it's so easy for us as human beings to start blaming and looking outside, say,
mhm,
you didn't do this and that was the cause and this challenge over here was the
Mhm.
reason why this didn't get done. But in reality, it all boils down to our response to what's going on, to the stimuli around us. And so,
Yeah.
are we flowing with that stimuli? Are we willing to pivot? How can we support? How can we make it happen? And you just find your way through, you
mm,
just learn to be more flexible with it. Granted, there are days when you're miserable and you're terribly upset and the computer isn't working or equipment fails and you just want to tear your hair out. And those are great days to just go for a stroll with the dog,
mhm.
curl up with a good book, do some binge watching, get your mind out of the office for a while, and then come back to it with a solution mindset, because the solution mindset is everything.
Yeah. There's so many nuggets of wisdom that you've shared, not just for working together as
Good.
a couple, but for being an entrepreneur, and how can you, navigate this journey that can be very roller coaster ride at times. How did you get those insights and those skills? Is this something you've learned over time? Were you intentional about learning it, going on a course? Where did you get your insights from?
I think, honestly, I think it all boils back to my difficult past. And
Mm.
my response to that was I'm not going to have that define me.
Mm.
I'm going to move forward. And the only way I could do that, because I was on my own, was to start studying self-help books, to put myself through school, to pay my own rent, to do the things that needed to be done. And I think that because that started really early in my life, I always had that mindset, And when I decided that I wanted to work for myself, I didn't want to work for someone else anymore. I wanted to work for myself. And when I decided that and ran my first business, I gained a lot of skills when I took like small business courses through the small business organizations and government programs that are available for entrepreneurs and, to help you launch your business and whatever. They walk you through that. Accountants, they all help walk me through the process, and so it evolved slowly.
Mm.
Then when I lost that business to the car accident, and Dave and I pivoted our thinking, and we moved forward in a different way together, collaborating together. Those skills just moved over to this
Yes.
other project.
Mm.
I just rolled up my sleeves and I was like, okay, how do I do this? What are the steps involved in this? Let's get some information. And so back to studying, back to research, back to asking questions, attending events, going to forums, listening
Mm.
to interviews, reading books, taking courses, and moving my way into that business in that way. And so that's what we did. We just, you just find, I guess the best way of saying it is if you have a goal, you have an idea, whether it's a small goal in your action plan or a major goal in your business, the best thing to do is to break it down into really small steps. Today
Mhm.
I'm going to make a phone call. Tomorrow I'm going to go visit this place and see if they have any programs that might be able to support me. The next day I'm going to do this. So you break it down into these tiny, tiny steps that are doable, that you can do, that you can perform within your schedule, and make it a success. Set yourself up for success. So if you think, oh, shoot, I could do 4 hours a day, assign yourself a half an hour
Yeah.
that day and
Mm.
make that a consistent thing for every day, so that it's always a success. And you can always say, yeah, I accomplished it. And that step-by-step process will help you do it more efficiently. You won't miss things along the way. If we rush into it, we look at it from like an overview, from a plane view.
Mhm.
You're in
Mhm.
an airplane and you're looking over the whole city. It's a lot different than being on the corner and navigating your way and making,
Mhm.
navigating traffic and all of that. So do the steps slowly, and celebrate each one of those steps. Just be systematic about it. Try not to put too much weight on your shoulders, because that's a lot of problems that a lot of entrepreneurs will do. They'll take on too much and
Mm.
they'll think like, oh, I'm so inadequate, I just can't do all these things. And of course you can't. None of us can. So take it in smaller steps, doable
Mm.
steps, but be self-disciplined, and be tenacious. Make sure that you are doing those things. Put it in your schedule, half
Mm.
an hour every day. Dedicate yourself, do the steps, and you'll get there. It
Yeah.
takes time, and it's not an overnight process, but yeah, that's what I would do.
And
Wow.
and you've done a lot, and you've certainly achieved quite a bit on this journey that you've been on. Um, it hasn't been a straightforward journey. You said it started out with challenges. Sometimes when we start out on the journey, we have dreams, expectations, um, visions of what the end of the journey is going to look like. But is there something that you've perhaps changed your mind about, in terms of what does success look like, or productivity, where you started out with a certain expectation, but actually you realized, well, maybe I didn't have that quite right there. Is there something you've changed your mind about?
Yes, I used to do a lot of comparing,
Mm.
me and them, yeah, right. And so I was like, oh geez, look at them and how not I am. So I was always, felt less than. I was always
Mm.
putting myself, and
Mm.
this was something I was doing to myself. It was all me. I was putting myself in this feeling of less than other people, because I was comparing myself to others who have had more experience. They had
Mm.
different contacts. They had an entirely different situation. Maybe they write in a different genre, so all of those factors matter. Maybe they have a different budget to work with. They have a different support system. All of those things matter into how they attained
Mm-hmm.
what they have attained. And just because I haven't reached there yet doesn't mean that I'm less worthy or that I'm less than. And so I've learned to, that's one of the things, like, mentally I've learned to do is do less comparing. Another thing I've learned to do is to change my mindset from I have to or I should to I get to. And I think that that really changes your mindset to, like, understanding the privilege of where we are as an entrepreneur. We get to do this. I have this opportunity. All of these things that I haven't done yet, those are opportunities for me, sitting there waiting for me to include in my schedule whenever I am able to, rather than, oh my God, these are all these things I haven't done. How terrible of an entrepreneur I am. These are opportunities for me that I can pursue when I have the time. And a lot of people are out there spending all kinds of money getting help to find opportunities like that. And here I have this, like, scroll of ideas and lists of things that I can, go to when I'm ready. So changing that mindset is vital. It's, it really is our self-talk, right?
Wow. You have shared so many tips, nuggets, insight that were just rolling off your tongue one after the other. I can see what an amazing mentor you are to other
Thank you.
entrepreneurs.
I was just going to jump in and say I love the I get to do mindset rather than I should.
Oh, have
And
to,
I
yeah.
have to, because I was reminded of, I think it's Tony Robbins who says, we say I should do this, I should do that. We end up, as he says, we should all over ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I get to do it. It's a privilege. It's an opportunity. So what would you say to other couples who are on this journey of working together, or even those who are considering working together? I'm guessing I have the sense of where you're going with this, but what would you say to them that would encourage them to say, actually, this is something that you want to do? You can come out stronger from this.
I think very careful and conscious conversation, discussing, uh, what is in the other person's mind. What do they picture? What are their views? What are their concerns? What are their fears? What are their stresses? What are their concerns? What could go wrong, in this collaboration? And how might we set up a system to avoid those things going wrong? Um, if it's someone that, say isn't a spouse, I would really suggest having a contract. Um, the contract can be just a paragraph long, or it could be, like, really long, depending on your relationship with that person and the size of that project, where you're holding each other accountable. And what happens if that person doesn't do what they said they were going to do? This is really important, especially if you're going to be working on a book with another writer, where they have promised to do a certain amount of work, and they have promised to do a certain amount of marketing activities. And what if they decide to back out of the project? Where is that going to leave me? So you have to look at, like, contingency, and how might the two of you collaborate on making some agreements now should those contingencies come up, so that both of you have an understanding and a feeling of being protected moving forward. And that could be even for the smallest event. Say I've agreed to hand out my friends bookmarks and gift certificates at a booth that I'm hosting at a market. And I'm also going to hand out some brochures for another friend at my market. Another friend of mine, maybe they have a product, and I'm going to do a couple of draws, contest draws on my booth to help draw traffic to my booth. And some of my networking colleagues are interested in participating in that draw. So they're offering products for prizes. So I'm going to have some sort of write-up with them, in that I'm going to do this for you. You're going to do something for me. So I'm going to send you pictures. You're going to share it on your socials. Maybe in 2 weeks, I'm going to provide you with something to put on your counter by your
Yeah.
cash register. Maybe I'm going to offer one of my books, and you can do a draw on your cash register in a couple of weeks, and we can continue to use both our audiences and drive them now to your place. So there's a
Yeah.
way of collaborating on these
Yeah.
projects where both are going to benefit, but having it, having a copy of an email communication or having it on paper where you both agree to do these certain things is really important to making both people feel comfortable with the project and feeling
Yeah.
like it's really going to happen and that it's a secure thing to do with you. Also, moving forward, when you go to propose the next project, they're going to be more willing to work with you.
We have
Yeah.
that there. But I'm conscious that we're kind of out of time now. But just one last thought there, which is
Yes.
if that sounds like such a good idea, as to something you want to do, write it down when you are working with somebody that is not necessarily your life partner. What's the recommendation for your life partner? If you do have a life partner, do we just say, don't worry, that all doesn't work, or how do you get over that hurdle in terms of getting on the same page with all those different things there and getting that expectation in place?
It's those weekly and monthly meetings. So
Yeah.
weekly is what we're doing this week. What's our action plan for the week? What's his? What's mine? The monthly action plan is where we've broken down what our goals are for that year. We've said, okay, we've broken it down into months. We want to accomplish this in these months. And we've both collaborated on creating that action plan. So it's not like he's left out of the decision-making process. He's right there with, making decisions, saying, no, I think that's going to take longer. Let's split that up into. So we have these conversations. And then every week we say, okay, this is what we've done this week. Couldn't accomplish that last week. I'm bringing it forward to this week. So we talk about these things.
Yeah.
Open communication, it really, really helps. Collaborating on the action plan, because you're both focused on it and where both of you want to go. If one person is saying, no, this is our action plan, the other person starts to feel left out and like, now you're telling me what to do and I don't really feel like doing it now because, you're putting on me. So it can be that kind of thing. So you really want to what do you see? Where do you see us going this week or this month? And then also, like I say, having a conversation with ourselves, how can I support the other person in the goals that they have this week?
Yeah.
What is it that I need to do to make their moment, their appointment more successful? And by having that kind of mindset, it makes everything so much easier. I think the other person also starts feeling more willing to reciprocate when they feel that coming from you. So it becomes like we're doing it for each other,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What a great note to end on, this mutual support, the understanding the other and being there for them. And I'm going to go back to that phrase you used much earlier, being that soft place to fall when necessary. Really enjoyed our conversation. Last quick
Thank you.
question is, how can
Yeah.
people find you and find some of those amazing resources or even be mentored by you as an entrepreneur wanting the support?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, really people can just do a Google search on Lillian and Dave Brummet, and they're going to find, pages and pages and pages of interviews like this and places to find us online. Amazon, of course, to find our books. There's 8 books available, Amazon in any country that you happen to live in. Really appreciate that. Where you can follow us as well, where you can see, upcoming books that we put out. I would really like to invite our listeners today to feel free to reach out and collaborate with us. I love networking. And so if you visit our blog, which is our main blog, we have 2. Our main blog is Brummet's Conscious Blog. And so do an internet search on that, Brummet's Conscious Blog, and go to the About page on there, and you'll see information on how to submit to the blog, how to be invited for an interview on that blog, but also other ways that we enjoy collaborating and networking with others. So I think that would be great. When you go to the blog, definitely look through the archive posts there. It's been going on for 20 years, almost daily for 20 years. And so there's tons of interviews and articles and resources there for entrepreneurs and writers to take advantage of. It's all free. So I encourage you to do that.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
Amazing. What a wealth of information. Well, Lillian, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
taking the time, for all those wonderful insights and nuggets that you shared. All the very best with books number 9 and 10.
8 and 9 or 9
Thank
and
you.
10?
9 and 10. 9 and 10. And yeah, we look forward to hearing when those come out. But for now,
Thank you.
I think we have to say it's a wrap. Thanks to our audience for joining us. And until next time, thank you all very much.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe and we'll see you next time.